right, guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Cole podcast. I think we're 0 for 5 in me remembering what the actual name of this is. Today, I'm actually really stoked because I get to interview somebody who I genuinely don't know. All the other podcasts that we've done, all the other interviews that I've been able to do have been kind of led. We've had a subject that we knew we were going to talk about. I knew the origins. I knew what questions to ask to get the interesting parts of the story. This is going to be cool because I know nothing about you. We talked for maybe 5 minutes at the Hammer Inn.
Yeah.
And then
we've talked more just now.
Yeah, we've talked more just now, waiting for Evan to set up. And then I think we talked maybe 30 seconds that Monday after the Hammer Inn, and then that's the full experience.
Yeah.
So I genuinely don't even know if you prefer to go by Kurt or Curtis. I've heard both.
Kurt.
Okay.
I never have had a preference.
Okay.
I've always been okay with either. And then Abby, my wife, has always been like, you introduce yourself as Curtis, but you ask me to call you Kurt, and people are going to getting confused. So just go by Kurt.
Okay. I think that's why we need people in our lives to make decisions for us that we don't think about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we've got Kurt, wonderful bladesmith. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We might get into some other things that we talked about 2 minutes ago that kind of heavy and not heavy emotionally, but kind of some thought-provoking things that kind of struck my interest. But first, to get us started off, where are you from? What do you like doing? What got you into it? Just a quick kind of bio of yourself.
Yeah. So I live in Johnson City, Tennessee, which is kind of northeast Tennessee. I got into knife making when I was in high school because my dad was looking into metallurgy. He's a ceramic engineer. Okay. And he's retired now, but when he was working, he was doing research and development at this plant that he's worked for a really long time. And he was doing some research on metallurgy and was like, hey, Kurt, we could try and make a knife if you want, because I've always loved knives. Yeah. And working with my hands and art. And so this kind of mixes everything together, because my dad's, as well as a ceramic engineer, he does pottery. My mom's a photographer. She's also an amazing artist, drawing, painting, stuff like that. And my dad dabbles with that too. So my whole family comes from very artistic stock. Okay. And so it was kind of just inbred a little bit. I think everybody has a little bit of an artistic side, at least. But when it's infused into your life from, age, when you're a kid and up, it makes a big difference, and it's more intuitive. So my dad just came home one, it was summer, and I was playing video games. It was like wasting my life, which I'm not against video games. Yeah. Do it as it comes. Yeah. Maybe don't spend 40, 50 hours a week doing it. But if you've got some free time on a Saturday and the sun's not shining, play some video games. Yeah. It's fun to unwind. Yeah. So, I was getting bored with that pretty quickly. So when my dad came and asked if I wanted to make a knife, I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah. And so, we modified, so we went to Lowe's, we got some like mild steel, a hammer, just some rudimentary tools. We got like a Harbor Freight anvil that when you hit it, it goes thunk. It sounds like, hammers and anvils are supposed to ring, and this sounds like wood. Yeah. It sounds like wood when you hit it with a hammer. So, and it leaves a dent in it. Yeah. But I was able to forge out like a blade shaped object and finish it out. I don't have that still. And I regret that, because everybody's like, I still have my first knife.
Really, I feel like I meet more people that have the same experience where they're like, I made it, I hated it, I got rid of it. I wish I still had it.
Yes, I did that. I hated it, I got rid of it. I've met a lot of people on the other side of that have been like, I hate it, but it's where I started. Okay. Or they say I love it because it's where I started, Yeah,
I don't have literally nothing that I've made. As soon as I'm done with it, I never want to see it again.
Yeah. I have a little bit of that sometimes. There are a rare few knives where, like, I really want to keep it. And
you ever, like, call the customer, like, hey, can you just send me a couple, like some live action pics so I can repost on my Instagram, of course, not because I'm sentimental about the knife, you know?
I do. I wish more customers sent pictures of their knives. If any customers are watching this, send pictures of your knives to me, because it's just cool to see people using them or displaying them wherever they have them.
That's kind of funny too, because I know a lot of people that tattoo, like a lot.
Yeah.
And if you're ever out to dinner with them or something and they've done a tattoo on you, leaving dinner almost every time it's like, hey man, how's that tattoo?
Yeah.
Can I get a picture of it? And it's like, 2 or 3 years worn and they want to post that. I've never thought about doing the same thing with a knife or an axe or a hammer or something. Yeah. It's like, hey, this is what it looks like after I've used it every day.
Yeah. And they have that's interesting because tattoo artists don't have excuse the mic. They don't have like ownership over that artwork anymore.
Right.
It's on somebody else's body. It's like, it's not theirs anymore.
Yeah.
It is their creation, but it's like, that's different.
Yeah.
You know?
You could go back
I could
to
go
that
buy this
and
back.
take that knife back. Right.
Yeah.
I can't have anybody who's tattooed me over the years say, hey, that's mine.
It'd be really weird if they did.
It'd be weird. Or if like you post a picture of it and they were like, hey, please take that down. That's my original content. You're stealing my content right now.
Please pixelate that tattoo.
Yeah.
Or pay me. More light.
Nice. We've got producer Evan having a fun time over here. So sorry, I interrupted you, but
no, it's good.
You said you ended up not keeping it. What was step 2 after getting rid of the knife that you made?
Well, I didn't really. The thing is, I didn't like make it, and then I'm like, I hate this, and I get rid of it. It was more like I just had it on my bookshelf for a long time.
Okay.
And over the years of me like purging, you're a teenager, you get rid of things because I don't know. Some people don't do this, but I get sick of having stuff everywhere, and I'll just go through and purge and like throw a bunch of stuff out. I don't know why, but that was one of those things.
I think my house is probably very depressing for people to visit because it looks like I just moved in last week.
Yeah.
I don't keep anything.
Yeah.
I'm not sentimental. I have books, and the only way I'll keep a book is if I'm like, I might need to re-reference that.
Yeah.
I might go back and reread that. But other than that, I have only the necessities.
I'm more sentimental now than I ever have been, mainly because I've seen the results of saving some things. I love photography because you're capturing a moment and you're able to relive that moment to a degree. I mean, you're never going to be able to relive a moment completely, but photography is a little bit of that. You're able to experience that a little bit again. And so it's a similar thing with, if you get sentimental with an object. I've seen the results of that, and over a long period of time. You may not think about it much in the moment. Right. You kind of have to pick them carefully because otherwise you'll be saving everything. But you just become a hoarder, which happens. But
especially in the knife making world, blacksmithing world. You go to anybody's shop above the age of 40. If they've been in the shop more than 5 years, it's
a wreck.
Never invite OSHA.
Yeah. I left a mess in my shop when I came here. I'm not excited to go back and fix that up, but it needs an overhaul. Anyway, that's a good segue, I guess. It's a good anchor back. I met Bert Foster, who's like 30 minutes from our place a couple years after I started making knives, and maybe it's just been a year. And he is a master smith with the American Bladesmith Society. Okay. And I think he's one of the most respected knife makers I think there is out there. But that's just in my eyes, I guess. He's one of the coolest people you ever meet. He's hilarious, storyteller. Anyway, he just kind of befriended me, and I took his information. I asked him questions. I took that information. I went back and applied it. Came back because you work on stuff on building skills, and you hit a wall. Yeah. And you keep hitting your head against that wall until you're like, I need to go to somebody else. And so he was that guy that I went to for that. And once I got over that wall, there'd be another one. And there's always going to be another wall. But he's been just a good friend and mentor for me as far as knife making and just life stuff. So met him. He helped me inspired me quite a bit with his lifestyle and his career, the way he runs his business, and just the way he carries himself. And so that's been one of the biggest, I think the biggest inspiration for me in my knife making is Bert. You can see his influence a lot in my knife making. I feel like I've departed a bit from his style, but you can definitely see the vestiges of his influence in all of my knives. So, yeah, I met him. During high school and college. I just went like every week, as much as I could, to go talk to him, hang out with him. I worked with him a couple times, helped him do some things in the shop. And so that really rocketed my skill level, because he was just, I'm just sitting on the shoulders of somebody who's been doing this for years and years and years. And he's doing it full time. Excuse me. He's been doing it full time for years and years now. So, yeah, that's the biggest thing. And then a few years after I met him, I met Jason Knight. Everybody knows Jason Knight. Super generous guy, super knowledgeable in knife making. And he allowed me to come in and work in his shop, have a little bit of space in his shop, and we just kind of shared rent for a little while. And he really, that was the next like big jump for me in my business and my skill level, is just being around him, him allowing me to use his tools. So I didn't have a power hammer or press. He allowed me to use the power hammer and press. So I think like God has put people in my life that have just very specifically led me down the path that he's led me down. Now he may lead me down somewhere else, but that's where I've come. He's given me specific people, and these very generous people. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about Jason, Shelley. Jason and Shelley Knight are the reason I am where I am. One of the big reasons I am where I am in my knife making career. So that was a couple years ago. And then I built a shop with my dad on his property. We actually tore down the shed that I started in and built up a metal building, put in new tools and all that stuff. So I've been in that shop for a couple of years, and it's been really nice. It's only like 20 by 25. So it's like less than 1,000 square feet, I guess.
Yeah, you make it look a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And, your Instagram videos and your YouTube videos, I did not know that it would be that small.
It's really crazy, because when you look at somebody's Instagram or their videos or their photos or whatever, it just, things can feel so much bigger.
Well, and your mind begins to fill in. It's almost like those optical illusion pictures where you look at it and it's like, this thing isn't really here. And then you go back and look at it and it's like, oh, it isn't.
Yeah.
When you watch those videos, it's like you imagine what's around it, and it's like, okay, there's a press right here. That means there's a power hammer here. There's this here. And in reality, I think more people are like you, where they almost have to design their forges like a cockpit.
Yeah.
Where they're standing in one place. Yeah, and they can just turn to move to do what they're doing.
Liam Hoffman, you ever heard of him? So Liam, I got to see, we met a long time ago before he was in the shop he's in now, and his little barn, he wrote a book, actually. Shout out to Forged, his book that he wrote. It shows pictures of it where he started and all that, and it's tiny.
Is it?
The forge area was dirt. It's smaller than my shop. It was way smaller than my shop now, which is saying something. And he had a press, and he pumped out axes. He's an axe maker.
Yeah.
He pumped out axes in that little shop, and he still does. Yeah. But on a much bigger scale, and with, he's always figuring out how to solve bottlenecks in his business. And so anyway, that's a really good example of that, because he started in a literal shed. I did too, but his was even smaller than mine, I think, although it was closed in. And it was literally just 4 walls, and he closed off one side to have a grinder room and hand working, all this stuff. So anyway, it's really handy to have a small shop for that fact that everything's around you.
Right.
You can you don't have to walk a mile all the time. Jason's the shop I worked with Jason at. If I said that right, the shop in Kingsport we worked in for a while was longer, and my stuff was kind of spread out a little bit, so I had to walk back and forth, which was fine because you get your steps in.
You get some time to think.
Yeah,
maybe adjust thought processes.
Mm-hmm. There'd be times I'd be really working hard, and I'd be running, literally running back and forth, and it probably wasn't very safe because I had knives in my hands. But
sure, don't run with knives.
No, I didn't. Yeah, don't run with knives.
So you, you're in your own shop full time now.
Yeah.
You also post absolutely stunning pictures consistently.
Thank you.
Of not only your own work but just stuff. So it's cool because I think a lot of times you have people who really hyper focus in on, the knife making, or they hyper focus in on David's a real big fit and finish. His fit and finish is top tier. He just did a 4-day class.
Yeah.
And they got anything outside of that done in like the first day and a half.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see you and your work. And might be weird. I followed you for a long time before we ever met, before I ever came and worked at Cole. Because there's an obvious joinery of there's artism, but there's also function. There's never a piece that I've seen you make that I feel like has lost its ability to be functional.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of when you said, you capture a moment. None of the pictures you post look staged.
Yeah.
You took a bunch of pictures at the Hammer, and in all of them that you sent us, they were real. They were live action. Is that something that you do intentionally in your work? Because that's also something that kind of I've noticed out of Jason. Is it something that you intentionally sit down and you say, hey, first function, and then I'll bring kind of some artistic flair to it?
So I don't think that that's intentional at all.
Okay.
I think that it's mainly because it's who I am. It's like it's just because it's what I care about. I don't sit down and say like I want to function first. I just like the way this looks, but it's also a little bit of my roots because Bert does the same kind of thing. He looks at function and beauty and like says, I want a mixture of the two.
Okay.
And I don't want to compromise on either one. And that's kind of where I want it to. He says, I want it to look good, work good, and feel good. So in the hand,
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to think about it. It's just like, if you're compromising on any one of those things, then you're kind of, it's not that you're doing things badly, you're just doing different things.
Right.
And I think that, I think for me, I don't love fantasy type stuff because, for my work, because...
No, you're flat out hating on it.
Dave.
Stay out of our inboxes about this, but fantasy is no good. I don't want to hear any comments. This directed at Dave. Anybody else that makes fantasy swords, I love your work. Anybody inspired by mythology or anything, keep going for it. But Dave is the one that we're targeting here.
Yeah, Dave is garbage. No, I really admire it in other people's work, but it's just not what I like.
Sure.
For what I do. And Dave's a really good example of that. I love his work. And it's just not something I would think to do. That's the thing. It's like I wouldn't even think to do it necessarily.
Yeah.
He's inspired some little things, I think, for me, but like his mind is totally different than mine.
Yeah.
Ben
said it perfectly when we did his interview, when he said, somebody asked him, why don't you just make knives? And he said, there's a lot of really good knife makers in the world. I don't want to muddy those waters. And he said that I loved it because it's like, it's the same thing. There's a lot of people that make really good mythological stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And it's the same for me I hate anything with a blade. I don't like axes. I don't like knives. I like making tools. I like the things that I would sell to you to make axes and knives. And it's like, I don't need to make axes. I don't need to make knives.
Yeah.
I really, really like function. I could care less about beauty.
Yeah.
I want it to, in 400 years, I want to be sitting on a cloud and look down, and someone's great-great-great-great-grandson is just in the shed and beating a wall with a hammer I made for no reason. You know, that's the functionality of that, like something that will outlast any of my generations. That's where I find my inspiration. And then I work with, you know, the Davids, and I work in a shop with David and Andy when I was first learning how to even work with my hands. I didn't grow up with a lot of that in my background. Yeah. And it was while they were building the sword for Thor. So it was very fantasy based. And it's like, I really want to support you guys, but this just isn't me. So, you know, and then Logan's very functional, very tactical. Yeah. So it's really cool to see somebody like you who can bring both and say, first of all, it's going to be functional, but also you're going to want to sit and look at it for a little while.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
yeah, there is something insanely gratifying about making a tool and then using it. Yeah. And it's there when you need it. And it's specifically for this thing that you do all the time. And it's just your faithful friend. Yeah. And that I can understand that, because it's like I've got even just like little things, you know, like I've got this screwdriver that I made because I needed a screwdriver that would not slip ever on the takedown knives that I make. Okay. It's got a flat head. It's just very simple, but I needed something that would lock into it and wouldn't slip, because if you slip, you nick it, and you've taken a lot of time to make that, you know, that nice flat-headed barrel nut on the back end of it. And so you get a lot of gratification out of using it, even though it's like, it's a really simple screwdriver. It's like nothing crazy.
And you couldn't sell it. Nobody else would ever need that. Yeah. Well, I mean, in that scenario, I'm sure you're probably going to get DMs that are like, hey, send me a picture so I can make one. But yeah, I think some of my favorite tools are, you know, spatulas that you just make a little bit sharp so you can get gum off the floor. And it's like, I could never sell this to anybody, but I know it's in my toolbox and I need it, you know? Yeah.
Well, and especially having a problem that you can't fix, like you've worked really, really hard to. Oh yeah. Like in your daily job, there's something that just makes you really frustrated because you don't have the right tool for it, and then you make the tool that does that job perfectly. And
I never even thought about single time. That the frustration is what gives you the appreciation. Yeah. You know. I've never looked at that before.
Oh my gosh, yes, because I mean, working in a shed I had one 15 amp breaker in my shed running all the machines.
Seems like not enough.
No, it doesn't seem like enough, does it? I switched it out for a 20 amp breaker. Oh. Probably not supposed to do that, but it did keep it from being tripped as much.
It's still tripped.
Might have caused a fire at some point, but it didn't. So that's good. But working in that shop with minimal tools and with minimal capability allowed me to enjoy where I am now so much more. And that's what I think people don't get when they go off and buy Coal Iron Works presses and stuff like that. But when people go buy that the first time, instead of hand forging, 100 knives first, or 50 knives, whatever it may be, and struggling to make that all by hand. And you learn new things and different things if you do that first and then move to the big tools. And so that's a really good example of that, because I just don't think people get the same gratification out of their work.
We do the same thing with, we do Forging Fridays the last Friday of every month. 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock or something, we shut everything down. We take our entire staff back to the forge room and we just forge. Yeah. And Nathan will have, maybe we'll do a slot punch, or maybe we'll do a chisel, or we were making hammers this last time. They all hand punched, or I'm sorry, they punched with the machine, but they all hand drifted A33. And it was intentional, because we want them to have that same satisfaction. Yeah. When Nathan started blacksmithing, he was 13 years old, he just built a forge. Yeah. And everything was done by hand. I came in, we were in a, I don't know, maybe 15 by 10 foot shed in Carmel, and I started working with him. Yeah. And it was because he needed somebody to literally drift. My entire job was just to drift tools for him. Yeah. And then, coming up with the press, it was like, oh man, we can do so much stuff but it's because we've had 4 or 5 years of thinking about, we could do this thing. I'm not strong enough. Are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Well, no, so that appreciation is there. You have to have that hard work and that labor on the front end to really appreciate, you have a 25 ton from us, and I'm sure it means a lot, but you also did a bunch of stuff by hand, it sounds like, before you ever got to that point.
Yeah. I actually had so I did everything by hand for a while, and then I bought a treadle hammer pretty soon after that. So a treadle hammer is just all mechanical power. It's not, it's mechanical advantage. It's not electric or hydraulic or any of that.
I think, does Christ-Centered Ironworks, I think that's his name. I think he sells a treadle hammer kit that you can put your own hammer on.
Okay.
I think
your own hammer?
Yeah, like you buy the kit and you supply the hammer.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. Just shout out that guy.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever that is. Christ, was it?
I think it's Christ-Centered Ironworks. Cool. Is his name. He's up in Michigan. Okay. He's real close to Holland Anvil.
Okay. Yeah.
If I'm correct. That once again, I'm real bad about hearing something one time and then confusing it. But I think he sells. I think we just scrolled past. He has a guillotine tool that's really cool too. But he makes a treadle handle kit as well, I think.
They're super cool because you don't have to have. I had a 15 amp breaker. That's all I had for all my tools, and that's not enough for a press. It's a 15 amp 120. Yeah. So I think it's 110. I don't know what the difference is, but 240, 110.
I'm not a scientist anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, and so in my little minimal shop that I had, it allowed me to make sanmai. It allowed me to make some real simple Damascus, stuff like that, and it was like built on garage springs on the back and stuff like that. So super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So at what point did you decide, your dad's a metallurgist, which I can never pronounce right, so I'm kind of stoked on that.
He's a ceramist.
A ceramist.
He was researching metallurgy.
Okay. I'm not going to try and say it again because I can literally never say it right. But so he's researching that. It kind of sparks your interest. You meet up with people like Jason that kind of feed into you. Yeah. At what point do you decide to take this full time and say, hey, I can't go work a 9 to 5. I have to follow this.
So, I actually knew that I wanted to do it full time when I met Bert because he was like proof that I could do it full time. And, or at least, that somebody could. And so I shot for that. I actually went to community college for electrical, and I worked electrical for 6 months after college.
And you don't know the difference between 110 and 2? Well,
I know the difference between 110 and... I've heard of like 120 and 110. Like people say it differently. I don't know if one was like older, like they used to use 110, now they use 120, or
everything I've learned has been low voltage, high voltage. Yeah. So I don't know the difference.
I know the difference between 240 and 110. Like 240 is just twice the amount of power because you got a double breaker. So, but yeah, I did electrical for 8 months and
really stoked this knife thing worked out.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't get my license or anything like that. Yeah. But I was like a helper for an electrician at Acorn Electric. It's a company in East Tennessee, and they work kind of on the East Coast mostly. And they're a bigger company. They work industrial. Okay. And I really did not like that because, I don't know, it was just the environment was a little bit harder than I wanted it to be. And mainly, I think mainly what it was is that I really loved knife making. Sure. I was obsessed with it. And so when I went work, when I wasn't working at my electrical job, I was doing knife making. So I was kind of burning the candle at both ends. Yeah. And you can only do that for so long. I mean, you can do it, but not at the level I was doing it. I was like basically working 2 full-time jobs. Yeah. Because I loved knife making. I would work late into the night, and then
it didn't feel like a job in the moment until you woke up at 6 a.m.
And then that felt like a job. Yeah. And it still doesn't necessarily. I mean, it feels like a job, but it doesn't it's not quite the same. That's another thing. You don't appreciate a good job until you've had a crappy job. At least in my experience. So, having that electrical job, it wasn't a crappy job. I'm very thankful for that job, but it was not what I wanted to do. Yeah. So, I met Bert. I knew it was possible. And so I started shooting for that, buying tools, all kinds of stuff to start building my skill level, my knowledge, all of this stuff, and building the shop up. And the electrical was really just to get me to the point where I could do it full time. So to pay for tools and pay for stuff like that. And at a certain point, I'd grown enough on Instagram that people weren't asking for my work and stuff like that. And I had like a month's worth of orders. And I was living at my parents' house. I had a shop that I wasn't like paying bills for or anything like that. Mm-hmm. All my tools were paid for. I was like, I am as free as I'm ever going to be.
Yeah.
And this is the time to take that shot. So I did. Yeah. And thankfully, there are always going to be times where things are tight. Yeah. I'm not, maybe not. I don't know. But like, I'm sure there will be times in the future where financially things are tight. But I love what I do. And so there were times during that time where I was just starting doing it full time. It was the best because I just walked down the hill. There was it's down at the bottom of a hill. I just walk down the hill in the morning, get started. And, so that's when I went full time. It was 2016 or 2017, somewhere in there. It's interesting because I was obsessed with knife making and I really wanted that to be my full-time job. It was kind of the greener grass kind of situation. Yeah. Where I was obsessing over this thing that you can't, like, nothing, like, no work or pleasure, anything like that in this life is fully going to satisfy you. Sure. And this might get into some of Christian theology because I'm Christian. But, like, I got to the point where I was, like, obsessed with it, and then nothing satisfied. Like, no knife was good enough, no skill level was good enough, and I came to a point where I was like, this is an idol in my life. So anyway, that's an interesting topic too, but that's when I started full time, 2015, 2016, 2017. No, it was 2016 or 2017. Because I graduated 2015. Okay. But anyway.
So Cole started in 2015, I think. So we're about the same age. Mm-hmm. He's been around about as long as we have. Mm-hmm. We've learned a lot about business and about how to operate a business. And I think one thing that people don't give enough credit for, a lot of these full-time knife makers, is you have to make knives that people want. You have to make axes people want, hammers, whatever. But you also have to be kind of a businessman, right? You have to know how to operate your business. Did you have any mentors? And you said you were inspired by the way Bert ran his business and operated. He's been a mentor in a lot of other aspects. Yeah. Have you had anybody in your life that have kind of walked you through those, or is it a lot of kind of tough luck? I figured this out on my own.
I'd say there is quite a bit of that. Taxes, especially. That's a big one that'll kick you in the butt.
The number one thing that I will ever tell somebody when they start a business or when they're self-employed or anything that is not working for a corporation, hire an accountant. Yep. It is worth your money. Mm-hmm. It is worth double what you're paying them.
Yeah. So, I mean, the tax is a big thing that still kicks me in the butt sometimes. I'm like, crap, I did not realize it was going to be that much or whatever, whatever it might be. Or just being frustrated that it is so much.
That it exists.
Okay. Yeah. There's just the fact that a little bit of tax thing. This really frustrates me. The fact that there's no middle ground for self-employed people. Right. It's like so normally it's the employer that pays their tax bracket. The employee pays their tax bracket, and there's like 7.5% of that tax bracket that each one pays. For self-employed, you're both the employer and the employee somehow. I feel like you should be called something different.
Sure.
But
like a proprietor.
Yeah, something.
Or,
because anyway, you pay both, which I guess is fair. I don't know. It's just a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so that can be frustrating. But other than that, I mean, that's the biggest thing that for me that's been like a really long learning process, mainly because I just don't like it. But other than that, I mean, website stuff, my dad helped me a little bit with that at the beginning. And just recently I've been like, I really need to update my website because it's old. And you can't even, I don't know, it's on Weebly. It's like created with Weebly.
Didn't even know that was
nobody knows about that. I mentioned that to people and they're like, oh, okay.
I vaguely remember it, but I did not know they were still hosting websites.
I mean, I guess I don't think they do a lot of advertising. Square just bought it, I think.
Okay.
So Square.
Your life's about to get a lot easier. Square is very easy to host.
Well, yeah, but for knife makers and stuff like that, it's really, you're technically not supposed to sell knives on like these with like Stripe and PayPal and all this stuff.
Oh, really?
Technically, because they call it weapons, and I don't make weapons. I make tools, but
sure.
Anyway, people could sell hammers and that could be used as a weapon
just
too.
as much of a weapon, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the intent I'm selling these for. And but it's frustrating because they hedge against that. There's no reason for them to be like, we'll just, because what if somebody does? There's a lawsuit and all this stuff. So there's some risk involved, and most knife makers know that. So anyway, figuring all that out, and then, so your original question was, how much did I learn from other people? How much did I learn on my own?
Yeah.
Bert taught me a lot about like kind of I don't know if you could call them ethics, but just kind of ideas behind
you can
selling.
Certainly call it ethics, yes.
Yeah, just like selling and being responsible for how you sell. So making sure if you take money for something, you're going to finish it. But he always said, don't take money up front. Just try, and if you take a custom order, try and get it finished. That carrot's at the end of the
it's a
line
motivator
there.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, the money is at the end. It's really hard to do custom knives if they're the customer is the one dictating it, and they're constantly talking to you all the time. If you already have that money, it's really frustrating because you're like, plus it's kind of mixed in with everything else, and that's kind of hard to manage.
Sure.
You kind of have like some sort of savings account separate so that,
like an escrow or something.
Yeah, or something so that their money is not being used until you're finished with their project.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's LaCroix.
It's the bubbly.
The bubbly. Burp water. So anyway, those kind of things. He taught me those kind of things, and still teaching me those kind of things. And also pricing. Pricing is one of the hardest things to figure out because you feel like your time is worth more, and you have bills to pay, and all this, and you want to stretch, what you're doing. You want to feel like your time was valuable enough to do that, but also the market kind of demands the price a bit.
Right.
It kind of dictates what you can sell at, because if you price it too high and there's no market there for that, then there might be one guy that buys it, but
you better
the next time, the next time you try and sell a knife, that same type of knife, that one guy's already got his knife.
Well, there's an interesting idea that I can't remember who was talking about how they looked into pricing. It might have been Logan, but essentially the way that cable and internet and repeat service providers do things is they have this upper echelon of like, say $400 a month for cable. Mm. It's like, I'm never going to pay that. But then they have a $200, and that's where they want people really paying is the $200. Mm-hmm. But then once a certain percent of their sales gets into the $400 customer, they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can raise that $200 to $250.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was Logan, but whoever I was talking to was like, that's essentially how I'll put a knife on my website for $700.
Yeah.
but I'll also have 12 knives for $400.
Yeah.
And as soon as the $700 knife is gone, now my knives are $500 and there's an $800 knife on my website, or however that system works out. So I think it's funny how, and Nathan is just like, yeah, I'll make it and I'll charge you $4 if that's what I feel like it's fair.
Yeah.
Everybody does it so differently. There's no standard. It's always interesting to hear how people decide, you know.
Yeah. And art is such a, like, it's subjective, you know, it's like, how do you price art, you know? And some of it is, again, what the market will bear. Other people are selling similar things for a similar price, and it's hard for you to sell at at a higher price when that person's selling at the price. So that's one thing you got to consider. You also have to consider the fact that, like, inflation is going up, so prices do have to eventually rise.
Sure.
With that a bit. You know, there's just a ton of things to consider with that, and I think that the most dangerous thing, this is what Bert's told me, it's like the easiest way to make money is to raise your prices. But it's also the most dangerous thing to do because you might price yourself out of the market.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to go back down because once you've sold a couple at that price,
that price is attached to it.
It's tight. It's attached to it. And that customer just bought that knife for, you know, whatever it may be.
Sure.
You know, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it may be. And if you go in, make another one, sell it for
$1,750.
Yeah, whatever. Half the price, they're going to be kind of ticked.
Sure.
And
understandably so.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly. So there's a little bit of ethics involved in pricing, and it's a fine line. It's hard because you want to get paid for your work, but there's only a certain amount. And it comes down to, like, how much are you willing to like, the way I think about it is, and the way Bert's taught me how to do it, this is the biggest thing, is you always need to be willing to outwork the next guy, because the guy working in his shop down the road just for fun doesn't care about time. It can take him, 5 months to make one knife that would take you 3 days. Mm-hmm. But they're just happy to make the knife, and they'll sell it for a kind of a lower price than you, and it's very competitive.
Yeah, and they've got a day job. They're not.
Yeah, they're not worried about. They're not worried about, like, trying to get the most out they can the most money they can out of it. It's kind of a bonus for them. So that's the thing. It's like you are competing with those people. Yeah, we all are.
And
all
unfortunately, there's a lot more
are.
of them than there are full-time bladesmiths.
Yeah,
full-time, blacksmiths, and all of the markets are like that. It would be the same thing as, if we get somebody like Aaron Sergel on here who makes these beautiful hammers, and, Evan's like, I want to buy a hammer. I'm going to charge Evan $20 for a hammer because that's what it cost me to buy the stock. Mm-hmm. Sergel's not going to be able to compete with that, or maybe he is. I don't know his prices, but I would assume Sergel, it's not going to be even close. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. He's in competition with me because I'm willing to sell it, not because I'm a hammer maker, right? But because we both know Evan, and I'm willing to sell it. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think there's a certain amount that people are like, if I make this thing, I'm going to have to sell it for this much because I spend this much time on it, I spend this much materials on it. And everybody else, there's overhead, and there's also, like, for those hobbyist knife makers, it's like, everybody else is selling it for this much, why can't I? Or especially if they're at the same level as that, the other person, as far as fit and finish and skill level and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's just that's one of the hardest parts. Business is. Being a businessman and a knife maker or artist is really tricky. Yeah. It's, you kind of have to use both sides of that. And there's other people that come along and they help you. So
sure. Well, I think we're going to have a part 2 sometime. We are getting towards the end of the time. I know that's an abrupt ending, but I think the next time you come on, we should definitely talk about what you've done with your business, with your art, with your craft, how that's changed the way that you've looked at life. And it sounds like you have a lot of experiences with a lot of really cool people. We had a really good talk before the podcast that I wish we would have recorded.
We should be talking next time, the part 2, about homesteading.
Yes. Legitimately how this kind of stuff has changed your outlook, because I feel like there's going to be some crossover that has changed your outlook. I keep saying the word outlook. If I say it one more time, I think I get a bonus from Microsoft. But there's definitely going to be a part 2. Before we leave, though, before we get out of here, plug yourself. Tell us where we can find you on Instagram, on the internet. If you have any classes coming up or demonstrations, exhibits, this is your time to go crazy. Tell us how to support you.
Yeah, so our main business is Freehill Blades on Instagram. If you want to check out my work, I do custom knives. That's I don't know. It's not really custom. It's like they're my style, but I'll do different handle materials and stuff like that. But
customizable.
Yeah, everybody says custom knives, but anyway, I make hand forged knives and some stock removal added in there. So also surrounding that, I also teach classes on Patreon, which is like $5 a month. And I do a video every single month, and you gain access to all those previous videos when you sign up. And then YouTube as well is just kind of like where I post fun videos to enjoy. I like making videos, so those are my fun videos, and some of them are educational. So I think that's it.
So Freehill Blades.
Yeah.
Do you have a link tree in the bio?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Linktree. Yeah. If you check out the Linktree, that's all my spots.
It'll take you to all the spots.
Yeah.
Do you have any classes or clinics or exhibitions coming up?
No, not really. Okay. Yes. Blade Show.
Okay.
I will be at Blade Show. 18S is my table. So if you're going to Blade Show, it's coming up. How many days we got? Month. It's pretty much
20
days. I got to start making knives. No, it's not. It's not 20 days, is it?
We have all of
May. 30 days.
All of May.
30 days.
30 days.
30-ish days.
That
Guys, we have some days. You don't know when we're recording this.
That's true.
You don't. This is the past speaking to you right now.
Yeah.
But Kurt, we are going to do a part 2. I've officially decided it might be the first Skype one if you can't make it up here, or if we can't get it done over the weekend or whatever. So glad you came up. Everybody check them out. Once again, we're going to plug it. Freehill Blades at Instagram. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good week.
Thanks, y'all. Did I do that too soon? Good. Done? Good. Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for doing all that.
Genuinely